Hello, and welcome to the GUHSDtech Actively Learn Trailblazer program. Here is a list of the contents of this introductory video. Please notice the time indicated next to each section. Please enjoy the contents of this video, Section 3, Learning the Tool, and Section 4, the Student Experience, which outlines how students can interact from a student perspective. Please pay particular attention to Section 2, Trailblazer Requirements, and Section 5, Start Blazing Your Trail, which will detail your next steps. Actively Learn is an online reading platform designed to improve students' reading comprehension and retention. Teachers can customize and scaffold reading instruction by adding multimedia support, embedded questions, structure and organization, cognitive suggestions, preloaded definitions, and real-time feedback. Teachers also have access to a grading dashboard that contains analytics on student performance. Our program is designed to educate, inform, and inspire you to try new things, most notably developing literacy in your classroom. As a reminder, let's overview the challenge. In order to receive full completion of the Trailblazer program for Actively Learn, we need to plan and implement 3 unique lessons. We need to have at least 2 meetings with the DLC. The first meeting must be in person. The second meeting can be either in person or over the internet. Lesson and lesson designs need to be completed and submitted by May 24th. Full completion will earn you up to 4 hours of curriculum writing. Additionally, you will receive a sticker for successfully blazing your trail. To get started, let's head over to activelylearn.com. Go ahead and click Sign In at the top right. Click Google and select your GUHSD account. You'll be taken directly to your home screen. At the home screen, the first thing we want to do is verify that you have a premium account. Go ahead and click your logo in the top right hand corner. Ensure that you have Plan under the Prime position here. Let's go ahead and click Profile. Make sure that everything's proper in your current plan. All GUHSD teachers have Prime access. This grants us unlimited article uploads and several wonderful dashboard features we'll discuss later in our session. We're going to first take a look at how to set up our classes in Actively Learn. There are 2 ways to add students to a class in Actively Learn. The first way is to manually add a class. Click the new class icon, enter the title name of the class, select the grade level for your course, and select Add. We've noticed that the class is populated under our classes heading over in this side. If we click Roster, we can invite students, just like we would with Google Classroom, by inviting them with a code. They would go to Actively Learn, log in, they would click Join Class, and they would enter this code. If we want to invite students this way, pop it up, put it on the projector, get students into your course this way. The second way, and probably the most common way to create a class in Actively Learn, is by clicking Add New Class and importing rosters that already exist within Google Classroom. This way we can sync the roster in Google Classroom with the roster in Actively Learn. Simply import courses from Google Classroom. You can select all courses to import. Select the grade level of the course. Scroll down and select Import. Once you do this, we notice that the course name in Actively Learn is the same as in Google Classroom. Under Roster, we have a list of populated students. Once the students log in for the first time, they'll have an active account. Anytime you add students to Google Classroom and you want them to be added into your Actively Learn roster, simply go to Roster and click Sync with Classroom. This will populate the most current list in Google Classroom. Once we have our classes rostered, we can take a look at some of the options we have here as a teacher to view student data. If we look at assignments, it tells us the assignments that we have. We can post individual assignment settings. We can assign them to individuals or to whole classes. Also, we have a gradebook. Within the gradebook, we have lists of students, we have total points, and then we have individual assignment grades. We'll talk about how we allocate these points in a little bit. We can also look at student activity, total class time, individual student time, number of revisions, vocab lookups, and notes, and we'll talk about those features later. So it really gives you a nice analytical response to how your students are performing and what they're doing while they're doing your activities. We take a look at student data. We have some graphical representations, and we have different filters at the top. And then we have overall class data. If you're portioning out work and identifying standards and tagging standards and DOK levels to your questions, you can see the data here. And we'll talk about that more when we take a look at what types of questions we can have our students answer. If we take a look at the top here, one of the most important pieces is this gear setting for each class that you have. So if you select the gear setting, you can edit your class details, which is simply the class name and the grade. And we can take a look at reading settings. Reading settings are how we can control the aspects of interactions that our students are doing. So students have the opportunity to do notes. They can see all notes, see classmates' responses after answering questions. So there can be some sort of collaborative feedback happening in the document itself. You can either toggle this on or off. If you want responses to be anonymous, you would take this one off. So go through and take a look at all these question and response types that you have here. Lots of different options here for how your students can see and what the transparency level you want your students to have when they're responding to each other and how they read your texts. If we take a look at the second option is grading options, there's lots of different ways you can grade your students' work. You can apply labels, so these top three would be more like a mastery-based project, a rubric. You can apply grading as far as the traditional grading scale, or you can do a numbered scale, or you can add your own if you don't like these tags. You can align the types of rubric here to grade totals. So advanced, 10 out of 10, and so forth. Multiple choice answers, you can do 5 out of 5 points for correct or not correct, or 1 out of 1, however you like to. Or you can give partial credit for some answers. We'll talk about enabling tagging of student responses, which is a feedback mechanism that you can use to give direct and clear, precise feedback to your students. If you want all of these settings to apply to all classes, simply select this option here. Go ahead and click Save. If you're a collaboration teacher and you work with a special ed or a general education teacher and you want to use the same class, you can co-teach. Co-teachers have the option of adding content, so they can add articles and they can modify articles, but they cannot delete the class. If you want to archive the class, maybe you want to use it again later, you can archive it so it disappears from your list. You can retrieve it later, or you can simply delete the course. Before we leave the class settings section, let's take a look at roster. When we look at roster, we do want to note that we have this other feature over here to the right side called extra help. If you notice students in your class need a little extra guidance or scaffolding during the reading process, you can specify them as needing extra help. This is going to come in handy because when we start making questions, we can assign certain types of scaffolding as extra help, and only the students identified as extra help in this roster section will see that content. Now that we have our classes set up, we're going to take a look at creating an assignment. There's 3 parts to creating an assignment. The first part is finding content. The second part will be customizing that content. And then the third part will be assigning that reading content to your students. Let's take a look at finding articles first. So if we look at Actively Learn, they have a huge database that we can actually draw from. We can search, we can change by reading levels, so there's lots of different filters for which we can search. Within those content areas, they're broken down by type, genre, and theme. We can click News and Articles, or we can simply search by key terms. Once we search for content, we do want to take a look at what these tiles represent. So we have the title, we have an image that relates to the title, we have the number of pages, we have the number of questions and the number of notes assigned here. So somebody's already created this. Actively Learn has 13 questions already and 13 notes. We can edit that anytime, so just because an article that you find already has questions doesn't mean you can't delete them or modify them to fit your needs. Another way that we can find and create content within Actively Learn is by importing our own sources. So if you click My Imports, and under My Imports we select Add Content, we can import an internet article that we find interesting. So if you're searching the internet and you're on other website articles, you can simply click Import Article, paste the URL here. We can also import Google Docs. So if our text is in a Google Doc, we can import that Google Doc by connecting Actively Learn to our Google Drive. Additionally, we can upload a PDF, and then the newest feature is to import video. So if we're searching YouTube and we want our students to watch a YouTube video, but we want to hold them a little more accountable, what we can do is we can take the URL of the YouTube video, paste it here, and then we're taken to an editing screen, and we can actually embed questions into the video itself that students have to answer. We can also ensure and track if our students are watching the entire video. Pretty cool feature. So once you have identified your content, let's say that I selected within Actively Learn and I want to choose one of the pre-made Actively Learn lessons. What is the origin and tradition of Valentine's Day? Perfect. I can see that this is 10th through 12th. It's 2 pages. It includes 2 questions and 1 note, exactly what I'm looking for. Let's go ahead and click it. When you click it, it opens up to the actual article itself. We can see the features of it. So this is kind of like a preview function. If you see what you like and you like the text, and you're ready to customize it because you're going to later assign it, we're going to go ahead and select Customize. When we click Customize, it's going to add it to our personal workspace within Actively Learn. And after we're done editing, I'll show you where that is. So once we're in the Customize area, we see that we have some other options here. Some text setting options we can see. We can change the margin and spacing. Notice it changes in the background. We can change the text size, change the font, change the background color. We can turn paragraph numbering on or off, and we can use dyslexic settings to support students who may have dyslexia. We can see that some of the images are already embedded here. Again, here's a note that's here. So let's say we go through and let's talk about how we can modify some of this content here. Here's a question that's already there. I can click those and I can edit it. I can change the type of question, and I can modify it as I see fit. What about if I want to create my own question? Let's say that I have a question that I want to be answered through here. Go ahead and highlight it, or highlight at the end. And we have a couple options here. We can insert a question, we can insert a note, which shows up as a comment on the right side, giving feedback to the student. We can insert a link to pop students off to another website or a video. We can white out a section. So if I want to white out a section, let's say that this is just not necessary, I can white it out so students won't see it. And then I can go restore it if I want to. Let's say that I'm ready for a question. I'm going to insert a question. Let's take a look at the question types. We can do a poll, we can do a short answer, or we can do a multiple choice. We can also select standards. So if you're having your students read for certain purposes, which would be a recommendation of ours, let's go ahead and select that reading purpose. Sample question. And so once we have the sample question in, we have several options for this question. We can add another standard. Let's say there's multiple standards that go here. I can add a DOK level. Maybe I want to start tracking students' depth of knowledge. Maybe this is a level 1 question because it's a definitional question. Let's say that I want to have my students support them with media. I can insert an image or a video to support the question I'm asking that relates to the content that I want them to know. I can insert a model response. So this is an example of what my students could be doing. I can allow media responses. Students can answer with an image, or I can change the weight based on the grading scale. I want to go ahead and save it. I notice that from the teacher view, this is what I see here. Another way we can support students is by highlighting text that we believe to be difficult, or highlight text that we think we can use to deepen their understanding and build some background knowledge. So we can insert a note. And when we do that, maybe this is a person, so it's a people and event. Maybe I want to add media. So maybe I want to put a picture of him to support this. So I'm just going to Google his name. There he is. Click the image. You're going to right click and you're going to copy image address. We select the image icon, we paste it in, and his image pops up. And maybe you write a short biography about who he is. We can toggle this as extra help or not, so students that we had identified previously in the class settings as needing extra help, we can toggle this on or keep this off. If it's off, then everybody will see it. If it's on, only the students who have been designated as needing extra help will see this feature. Let's let everybody see this by turning it off. And so this is what the students would see on the right side. And you can do this to any larger sections of phrases or to simply a word. When we're ready to assign our article, there's a couple ways we can do it. If I'm in the article and I'm ready to assign it, I can click Assign within the article itself. If I'm not quite ready yet and I got to do other work, go ahead and exit. And I want you to click Content. When we click Content, we notice that we see an area called My Workspace. My Workspace is going to contain all the articles that you edit or import. So here's our Valentine's Day one that we were editing earlier. Let's go ahead and click it. I'm going to finish my revisions and customizations, and let's say that I'm ready to assign. Once you're ready to assign your article, there's a couple ways we can do it. If we're in the article itself, we can click Assign. If we're not quite ready to assign and we need to finish this up later, we can exit our article. When we click Content, you notice we see an area called Workspace. Workspace contains all the articles that we have edited or imported and have started to edit. So here's the article. I'm going to reopen it, finish my edits, and I'm ready to assign it. So I'm going to select Assign. I'm going to assign it to the appropriate class. It gives me a link that I can share with my students, or I can share it to Google Classroom. What this will do is if you click it, it'll actually make an assignment within Google Classroom, so your students can simply go to Google Classroom, click the link for the assignment in Google Classroom, and start working on their Actively Learn assignment. When you're ready to grade student work, click the class for students who you want to grade. Go ahead and click the assignment. And we notice that once we click the assignment here, we have a couple options. We can continue grading or we can switch between classes. We can go back to edit mode if we want to. Let's get these tabs up here. This is the assignment data. We can turn it on or off. These are some grading features. We'll talk about that next. And these are all the notes student took. Let's look at assignment data. We have assignment, we have class average, we have average amount of time spent. Any notes they look up, you'll notice numerical values here. If they look at the notes, if they do any vocabulary lookups, if they do any translations, or if they do any text-to-speech, you'll see numbers here indicating how many times they have done that for this article. If we take a look down here, we have some more analysis on overall lookups, discussion questions, or the types of questions, and then how many are graded and how many were correct. You'll notice numerical values representing that over here. If we take a look at grading, these are all the student answers. So we can grade student answers according to the scale that we see fit, and then we can provide feedback for each student, and then we can select Allow Revision if we want those students to go back in and make the corrections that we've suggested. We can search by question, or we can search individually by each student. So these are all the students' answers here. Again, we can go by all students, in which case we're going question by question. This student, this one, this student, this answer, this student, that's his answer. We can show a grading rubric. We can anonymize names if we want to present this. So if I want to present some of this information to my class as I'm working, I can anonymize names, and then we can take a look and grade as a class. If I'm doing it independently, I can show student names. If the students were taking any notes during the time, these notes will be indicated here on what notes student took. So let's take a look at the student end of this. I have a sample student here. I've logged in at activelylearn.com with my school Google account. And I notice that my classes populate on the left just like the teachers did. I can look at my grades for assignments, any data that I have that my teacher can also view. Students can also unenroll and hide some of their courses. So the assignments are under the Assignments tab. We're going to go ahead and notice that I have 4 unanswered assignments in this assignment. So let's go ahead and click this. I immediately see all of the notes that my teacher has selected here for me to see. When I go through, I have a couple different options. If we notice in the very top right, I can hear the text from the very beginning. So if I click this, the text will be read to me. Any words that I highlight, I can highlight and take a note. So maybe these are comments that I'm making or connections to the text that I'm making. I can choose to share these with the class or not, and they'll show up in the comment stream here. And I can also give it a category, or I can supply an image to help me understand what's happening here. Another option I have is I can hear it. So if I'm not sure how to pronounce this, I can click it and it'll hear it for me. I can also define it, or I can also translate it. So lots of different options for students to be able to interact immediately with the text to support reading comprehension. The progress that I'm making here is correlated and tracked synchronously in the teacher dashboard. So whatever I do here, teacher will be able to see on the other end. All of the notes that I make, the teacher will be able to see how many I've made. Anytime I hear it or define it, the teacher will be notified on how many definition lookups I have and how many translations I have. So it's a nice way on the back end when the teacher goes in to see this, they can see how the student is interacting with this from the teacher dashboard that we looked at earlier. You'll notice in your Google Classroom, under the Classwork tab, we have divided our resources into two separate topics. First is the Trailblazer process. You've watched the overview video. You're going to want to open your planning guide. You're going to complete this planning guide as you work on your Actively Learn lessons. Contained in this planning guide are thoughts, reflections on lessons you have done, but also some goals that we're going to set to improve performance of your students and also for you to grow as an implementer of Actively Learn. When you're finished with each lesson, please submit your lesson via this Trailblazer lesson tracker. Please make sure that your Actively Learn reading lesson is co-authored with GUHSDtech at GUHSD.net. You'll notice some resources at the bottom. GUHSDtech Vault contains a large repository of Actively Learn resources. Please take a look at the levels of use document. Where are you in this process? Have you implemented before? Have you created before? Have you never even seen this tool? Is this brand new to you? Or are you currently working on things and have ideas for your future use of this tool? Thank you for watching. Please refer to our GUHSDtech website for further help or email GUHSDtech at GUHSD.net for any and all questions. Good luck, Trailblazers.